I hearing myself. I just also want to welcome everybody to the building again. Our second time back here. We're experimenting with technology again, and this room has a deceptive amount of ambient noise. So, as we told our teachers today, please be loud and proud, especially for the sake of anybody who's joining online. Okay, we want to make sure that they can hear what we have to say.
Thank you. So, as clearly as I hopefully can we carry a motion to approve the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda for the August. I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And again. And just another matter of routine business. Everyone was sent the July minutes last week. If you anything to raise, please do so now. Otherwise, we will entertain a motion to approve the July minutes.
I make a motion to approve the July minutes.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the July minutes as written? Thank you. Say aye. And again?
Aye.
Against? None. Okay, hearing none. We can move to new business. So Michael, with that, at the start of having now had a few weeks with this, most of the new staff, we'll bring us to the executive director's update.
Thank you. I hope everybody had a chance to see the bullet updates that we sent around as a pre-read. As is our practice, I'm not going to rehearse all of them, but I'll certainly take questions on any of them. A few highlights to mention. We're still in a good position on enrollment. We've gotten a few more applications in the last couple of days. Our projections dipped a little below 100% due to some openings in second grade. So that's now the object of our marketing push, is to get the word out. We've got a few spots in our second grade class. We do have waiting lists in all the other grade levels, that is kindergarten and first grade. And as you guys know, we don't backfill enroll in third grade. So that is in good shape, but something we're keeping an eye on, and we won't be getting complacent about that. Hiring was a big worry when we last met, and you may recall we had 7 or more openings at that time. It's really been the bulk of the work of myself, Deli Ness, our leaders, as we've been focused on getting the right people in the right seats for this year. We're not quite there. We have a couple of more openings, both in second grade, but we have one offer outstanding, a couple of interviewees kind of in the pipeline. We don't want to rush that decision, but since training has begun, we also don't want to wait too long because our families need to know who their teachers are. Yeah.
When we last met, there were 70 teaching positions not filled and several other positions as well.
Right.
So just as a whole, what's remaining?
There are no non-teaching positions that are still open. So everything's been filled except these 2 teaching roles. And they're both in second grade, right? We welcomed a social worker for the first time to our team. She started yesterday. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the roles, but I think it's really nice to go into the year with the exception of second grade, having these really built out teams for student services, for operations, for each of our academic grade teams, for our interventionists. It's fun, and we'll talk about what we did yesterday to kick off our summer institute, but a lot of that work was around letting the teams get to know each other. We also, I think I had noted in a previous hiring update that we were considering potentially hiring our own bilingual speech therapist, even though that would come at a cost. We have not elected to do that at this time, but we have a lead on a very strong bilingual speech therapist who the DOE would pay for. And she was attracted by our model and actually approached us. So we're hopeful that we could sort of get the best of both worlds there, and avoid the cost and still have a great new team member. So that's the one position. It's not really a position, but one person on the team that will follow up again next month. I thought I'd share just a couple of highlights, and I hesitate to do this because we've gotten to know our new team members and I really want to just brag about all of them, but I'll make a couple of rhetorical points, focusing on two of our teams that are, I won't say they're particularly strong, although they are strong, but that are particularly populated by some new educators, just to give you guys a flavor of who are some of the folks that are coming in. And Delinas, these are your people too, so go ahead and chime in as much as you like. But we have a strong grade 3 team. Right?
We have Kendra, who has worked in role before, very experienced working in 3rd grade, passionate about math education. And so she's joining us here, and she'll be our grade level chair for the 3rd grade team. We have a returner, Maria Townsend, who is one of our strongest teachers here, who will be going from tenure position to ELA in 3rd grade. She's also taught 3rd grade before, prior to coming to our school. We have Adana from the Academy, who is as well joining us and is very familiar with the community. She's been living in Sunset Park for all of her life. So it's great to have someone who knows the community so well. We have Debbie Romero, who will be working with our 3rd grade ICT classroom. She comes from the common schools, where she was overseeing their English language learning program at Uncommon, and working on differentiation for those students. So she's coming in to help us in supporting our special students' needs in 3rd grade. And then we have Gabby and Jason, who were our 2 original interventionists when we started this program, very small last year, and we've tripled in size. They know our kids so well and are so passionate. They work through the summer in our summer academy, not take much of a break because they are so passionate about this work, and they will be also joining the 3rd grade. So an extremely strong 3rd grade team that I know that working collaboratively with the leadership of our team for that team that's not here, the 5 who also come from a comment. It's just, I'm really excited about what's going to happen in that team and in all of our teams, really.
Yeah. We mentioned 3rd grade. Of course, it is a testing year, but it's also the first time we've had a 3rd grade, which means it's the first time we've had 3rd grade standards and that sort of upper elementary needs. So we were glad that the recruiting efforts paid off for all of our teams, but we wanted to highlight this one. On a more creative note, I wanted to share our new arts and special subjects team. Miguel on the left has the best haircut at LEEP. He is our new art teacher. If you go to miguelayuso.com, you can check out some of his visual artwork. Felipe Fournier, you can find him on Spotify, both his music and his pop culture podcast in Spanish. He has roots doing programming with youth, including some of our LEEP students here in Sunset Park through some of the Mexican American and Hispanic groups. I should mention that Miguel is from Mexico himself. Felipe is from Costa Rica, and with roots in Chile is our brand new dance teacher, who is also with us on the summer camp and summer school faculty, Loreto Astroza, who's a professional dancer. So we're lucky to have these 3. We're excited to have them work together as our team to help shape the future of the arts program. And joining them is our PE teacher, right? Patricio Castao, our grade level chair. And then do you want to talk about the science teachers, Delinas?
Yeah, we are excited to have a focus on having two teachers solely focus on science. So we have Abby, the returner, who will be focusing in providing science instruction for kindergarten and first grade. And then we have Mariana, who will be teaching the upper grades, second and third grade.
So Abby has a master's in education and neuroscience, and Mariano has a background teaching science, including robotics. So we're glad to have them all here. We will shortly have our website updated with a lot more information about all the teams and all the teachers and great photos we took of them yesterday, but consider this a little bit of a preview. Questions on hiring or the team at all? Okay, it is. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Our music teacher won a Latin Grammy a couple of years ago for his work producing an all-female mariachi band. I don't know if that's who they are. Yeah, but he hates it when I brag about it, so I always try to brag about it. But yes, our Grammy-winning music teacher. I should next time. We wanted to share some academic updates. It has been an intense few days, and in all honesty, we haven't spent a lot of time crafting these slides. We have spent a lot of time getting ready for presentations Delinas and I have both been doing. But the good news is that we're very aligned, I think, on what our themes are, and we're right in the middle of this work. So it's quite easy, I think, to talk about. So Delinas, I think, do you want to start with Summer Institute and then we can go into some of the priorities?
Sure, yeah. We started Summer Institute last week. Last week we welcomed our new teachers. So we had 3 days just with our new teachers. Really an opportunity to lay that foundation of who we are as a school, dig into our mission, our values, our belief statements, talk about the dual language model and what that looks like within this particular school, and also just building relationships, building community, and getting them excited and engaged in the work that we are about to do. And so we had a wonderful time together. And then yesterday, we welcomed all of our staff, 60 plus staff members. We did it off-site. We wanted to make it something extra special for our team. So we rented a space in Midtown Manhattan. It was a wonderful, wonderful day. Again, really just making sure that there was alignment between our returners and our new staff. This is what we want to do this particular year. This is year 3. Building again that relationship, that team building. We had a lot of team builders, a lot of getting to know each other, working in small groups. Michael talked a little bit about where we started, where we've been. I talked a little bit more about the future and where we're heading, where we're going. I rolled out our academic priorities, which you all have a copy of the document, more in depth with the team and what it meant. And so we talked about, and we were vulnerable and we're open about the challenges that we've had the last 2 years, and what the plan is moving forward to overcome those challenges that we've had, so that year 3 is the best year we've had, right? 3rd year in the term. And I have to say that everyone, it seems like a whole complete culture reset, and that's purposeful, right? I've been working extremely hard with our leaders, and norming with my leaders in terms of what is the culture that we want to set at the school, how do we interact with our staff, how do we intentionally build relationships, how do we increase our own emotional intelligence, how can we read body language to make sure, people are feeling things, not feeling things. And that's really paid off.
I think everyone is feeling a sense of belonging, which when we go into our academic priorities or school-wide priorities is one piece that for me is really important, because in order for us to do our job effectively, we need to feel like we belong in this school, in this organization, and that we can trust one another, and that we care for one another. And that's always been the case. But as we all know, COVID has really hit us hard as a community. And I think that that emotional resiliency was like a little bit weak towards the end of the school year. And so building that up. And I think that starts with trusting relationships. So again, leaders have been doing an amazing job. We've been doing, today we started here in the building. You can see all of the posters around, around the room. We've had our trainings happening here. This week, there's a big focus on responsive classroom, which again is one of our priorities in terms of school culture and serving the whole child. We've had our interventionists and our special education teachers and Orton Gillingham training, which is an approach that's particular for our students who need extra supports. Yeah, and we've just been working diligently, and our team is super excited. You can feel the energy in the room. They are ready to take on the school year, ready to welcome the kids. They just want to see the babies. They want to see the kids, and everyone is like 100% in, which is really exciting to see. Everyone seems rested, which is good, and because it's going to be another year. But I'm really feeling optimistic with the team that we have, with the leaders that we have, that we are off to a strong start. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the academic priorities?
Yeah, no, I think that would be, Delia's really laid out for our team what it is that we want to and need to focus on this year. And so, yeah, if you wouldn't mind summarizing those. The folks have the document. I hope you had a chance to see this. There will probably be some tweaks for different audiences, but this is really the core themes that we want to focus on.
Yeah, so we have 3 areas of school-wide priorities. Priority number 1, finding, serving the whole person, and that's students, staff, and families. In this document, you see a description of what that means. I also included our why. Why are we selecting this as a priority? Why is this important for our school? And then there's a 3rd column with what those specific outcomes look like for that particular priority. But with
Sorry, I'm going to listen to the mic.
Oh, okay. I was like, what's happening? But with priority number 1, whole people, again, I'm really thinking about this as a bucket with our students, staff, and families. With our students, we really want to roll out responsive classroom, which is just an approach to both academics and just school culture, discipline, that is much more developmentally appropriate for our children and really centers on building strong classroom school-wide community. And so we are providing training to our teachers around that for our students. It really also elevates the importance of thinking about the social emotional learning piece of our children as well. For our staff, as I mentioned before, I think building strong relationships, that relationship between deans, coaches, and teachers is something that is so vital and so important for their success. And so I've been really focusing with the leadership team on how do we build effective relationships with the people that we coach, the people that we work, so that we can really elevate them and bring their best selves out. And that's been a focus of my work with the leaders, and also just being very clear and transparent on what our expectations are for everyone in the organization. So that is just like groundwork. We know what we're here for. We know what our role is. We know who our supervisor is. We know who we go for what. So that's been part of the training as well. And so priority number 2, improving quality of instruction. We are really focusing and continuing, because this is work that we started last year, with this idea of progress monitoring and then upping the rigor of instruction in our classrooms. We started progress monitoring with our exit tickets last year, STEP data, our data management system, and tracking the progress of students, but we want to take that even further to make sure that we're not waiting until there's a round of STEP to figure out who's the student that's struggling, who's the kid that needs extra support, but there's weekly progress monitoring that's happening in the core subjects that then as a leadership team, my team is bringing us that data, and we're having weekly data analysis meetings to see how our students progressing against the standards that we have for them. And then rigor of instruction. We talk a lot about how do we get our kids to do like the heavy lifting and the thinking versus a lot of teacher talk that sometimes happen. How are we having our students actually do the work and do the heavy thinking in the classroom? And a lot of our professional development will be on what are the strategies, instructional strategies that you use in the classroom to make sure that they're really doing rigorous work that's going to push their thinking further. And then lastly, we also have teacher development. So that goes again on having a clear outline of PDs. So really our PD for the entire year has already been scoped out. Yes, there's always areas to move things as we see, what the teacher needs are, but making sure that the goals that we've set are informing our professional development calendar. And also thinking about what does support look like for different teachers, right? So for example, as I mentioned earlier, we have most of our teachers are doing responsive classroom. We have our interventionists who are doing Orton Gillingham training. So making it focused in the area that they work in to make sure that they have the necessary tools to be successful in the work that they do. And then again, this idea of the relationship between our deans and our teachers. And I'm also doing sort of a professional development scope and sequence for our leaders so that they know that the training that they're getting in order to elevate and also get the supports that they need to become better leaders, better coaches for their teachers as well. And again, I know that Michael mentioned this at the last meeting. We had a leadership training earlier in the school year, during the summer, where all of this was rolled out to the leaders first so that we can then execute it and roll it over with our team. Yeah.
Questions about academics?
I don't have a question, but I'll just share. We reviewed these last week, and I think I shared it with Dennis and Michael that I think really solid priorities and very aligned with, just kind of like general best practices, but also from my understanding of the last year and the past few years here, like it feels very clear, concrete, and not just theoretical, but like you look at the specific outcomes column, like measurable. And we talked a little bit around, yes, it may not be that every single thing gets checked off, but it gives you like a concrete way to measure it. And then what we did talk about was what it looks like to progress monitor at the school level and what like a checkpoint in early October looks like in comparison. So I feel like you're in a really solid place. Thank you.
For those of us who are new, can you describe a little bit about what Weststone is and how you technology? I assume it's like a tool for collecting information.
Yes. So we have a couple of tools that we'll use and some that are new as well. So Whetstone is one of the tools that we started using towards the end of the school year last year. It's a platform where coaches, deans can go and collect all of their observation notes. So they go into a classroom, they observe, they give feedback. all of that feedback lives within this online platform that then I have access to, the other leaders have access to, and we can actually track the growth of a teacher, right? So we can go back into the platform when we observe next and say, yes, this teacher met all of their next steps that I established for them from the previous time that I met. We can see trends on like, what are the areas that teachers are needing extra support on. It auto-populates that information for us as we're putting in the information. So it's a great tracking tool to track teacher growth in terms of their professional development, the feedback that we're getting them, and whether or not whether they're implementing it or not. You can also record teachers live on it and leave timestamps and notes on like their video for them. And teachers can also log on to their accounts and see all of their feedback in one location, one place, and also see their trajectory and their growth. And then we have another program that we're using called All In Learning that tracks academic data. So let's say the kids do a quiz at the end of the week. We can scan those answers in, and then it actually does all the calculation for us on what percent of students passed it, who didn't, and gives us those reports that will help inform instruction for the teachers, and will be what we use as well to sort of do our weekly analysis and tracking of how grade levels are doing across the school. Yeah.
You join us. Yeah, it's been fun to see the teams at work and also to see our returning and new teachers mix and mingle together. We establish a new tone and really are able to get more granular in a lot of different areas. I think a good example of that is responsive classroom. So we've always followed the principles of responsive classroom, but the actual practice, training, getting the manuals out, going through role playing, getting feedback on how you're doing, watching exemplar videos. We're fortunate to have our vice principal leading that work who knows it so well, but it's also just part of the intentional rollout that you've set. So it's more to come on that, but I'm excited as well. I can't remember feeling, frankly, like so optimistic and like walking into a room and feeling that electricity. So I'll stop gushing now, but we're having a good week. Changing tone, perhaps. We want to make sure that we can keep having good weeks. How's that for a segue? And that means that we need to have an intentional approach to COVID safety. The good news, of course, is that we aren't where we were a year ago. A vaccine exists. The statistics for children, especially, and also for adults, are suggesting that the risk is low, especially if you're an adult who has a vaccine. And we also know a little bit more about this disease in terms of how it spreads and how it doesn't spread and what seems to be effective. There's still all the emotions that we had from previous years, and there's still this almost impossible problem of how do you weigh risks? How do you weigh freedoms? How do you weigh different stakeholders who have different approaches? We have people in our building as staff members who are keenly sensitive and concerned to sort of any possibility of exposure, and we love those people and like we take that really seriously. And we'll talk about some of the particulars, but we also have people who have concerns about like being forced to do things themselves, and we also love those people and we also take their perspective seriously. So we've been trying to plot a course that's reasonable, that's safe, that we can look back on and feel confident that we were doing right to keep us safe and keep us open, as we kept saying all through last year. And so to that end, I guess there's two things. One is I'd love to talk through the concrete steps that we've been thinking about. If you're on the board, you received this in the pre-read the other day. If you are joining us over the webinar, we'll have it on the screen. We're also going to continue to gather parent feedback. So our families have not seen a survey on this yet. They will. I want to say that that'll go out tomorrow. And then we're also going to be circling back with families for another webinar to kind of talk about what's going to go on. And then even after we reopen, we're going to continue to monitor the world, the data, the recommendations, and all of that. So this is going to be a continuing conversation. So I think it's okay with you all. I'd like to be a little bit deliberate here and step through some of the specifics. If you are with us as I see two parents here, Alma and Lauren. If you guys would like to comment, I don't think anybody on the board would object if we sort of allowed that to happen in the middle of the meeting as we go. Right, so we're all friends here. So I'm going to go ahead and talk through this, and then we'll make sure that we can have everybody have a chance to chew it over. Okay, without further ado, some of the steps that we're thinking about at this moment. The first is around vaccinations. The DOE is, last I heard anyway, doing something along these lines, which I do believe is a responsible step for us to take, which is that we encourage and cajole and hint and urge all of our staff members to get vaccinated. I know that north of 90% have been. It may be as high as, I think last night I was calculating 92, but I wasn't sure about another person, so it may be higher than that. So we've made a lot of progress with our team, getting shots in arms and having vaccinations. That's the single best thing we can do to protect everybody in our school community, is to have people vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. We've urged our families to get vaccinated. So there's no ambiguity about that. Those who are not comfortable being vaccinated at this time, what we've told them is that we require you to get a weekly COVID test, that's outside of work hours. In other words, you're not going to get time off to go do that. That's a weekend thing. That started this week. And that we also reserve the right to announce a mandate. As an employer, we're allowed to mandate this. It's our decision that we have to own and live by. We understand that legally, if we choose to mandate, we'd have to carve out a couple of exceptions. But that at this time, I don't recommend that we go there yet. And one reason is that we have some very strong teachers who I don't think would stay with us. And so in my mind, thinking about the statistics and the relative risks, it's a very hard call, but I'm not yet there. I'm not yet ready to say that, you can't work here unless you get the shot, even if you're going to wear a mask and get a test every week. These are the types of things we have trustees for. These are the types of things where we have public meetings for. So definitely open to the conversation. But at this time, this is my recommendation. And David, we got a comment earlier that folks were having a hard time hearing. So I'm not trying to run around being the AV guy, but I think I will walk the computer over to you. Oh, well, I can do that.
But also, it's not often somebody they can.
I think it's more about the mic than judgment on you. Yeah, this always takes too long. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make sure we're getting this correctly without waxing about the numbers.
Right.
you're telling me that you believe there are somewhere between 4 and 5 teachers at this school that have not been vaccinated and would leave and also don't have medical or religious reasons not to be vaccinated. It's an innocent question that sounds very aggressive. I'm just trying to understand exactly what we're talking about.
I have calibrated for your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to get into too many specifics, but I will say not all of our hesitant members are teachers. Some are on the operations side. And when push comes to shove, I don't believe there would be that many who would leave the job. So I think you're talking about probably 1 or 2 people. At least one would be a teacher. Yeah. So that's correct.
Each other day to day have been vaccinated or seemingly going to be compliant with what we want to do to keep them safe.
I think so. So if it's okay, maybe we'll sort of let that linger for a moment. I'll keep going through these steps, and then we can like talk about the whole thing and make sure our remote participants can talk. Masks is another subject. We've been without state guidance until very recently. And their guidance is that we do have students and staff members, even those who are vaccinated, continue to wear masks. That's, I think, a pretty conservative standard, but talking it through with the education committee, I think we sort of identified that the biggest drawback to this is you can have vaccinated teachers teaching phonics with a mask on, which developmentally is not great, especially at a dual language school. We're saying, no, put your tongue like this, but you're wearing a mask. So I think as a common sense accommodation and adjustment, we would just propose this exception, which is during phonics, during speech therapy sessions, staff members can briefly lower their mask. Typically, they're standing in front of the room away from the kids, demonstrate the mouth and face movement, and then return the mask to its place. That seems like a common sense way to not hurt our instruction, but also, promote safety. And also just, I appreciate that for families who are not in our building regularly, it's a bit of a leap of faith to just sort of see these slides and hear us make promises. And it's even more confusing if we end up with some adults are wearing and some aren't. And so it'll be consistent. You've seen from our pictures that we've had vaccinated staff members, as we are right now, feel free to work without masks. But when the school year begins and we have kids around, our plan is to return to wearing masks. Right. Yeah, and we're really talking about the teachers, not the students. Yeah. Right. So everyone will be masking up, but during those phonics lessons, the teachers will show their face because that's really part of teaching. We also have ordered clear masks. Different teachers have different success rates with those, but it's an option, and we're not going to let them not have it. What? Thank you for the questions. Please keep them coming. If I try to multitask, I'm going to be confused. So I'm going to keep going, and then we'll come back to all the questions. In brief, we're going to continue pod style. Our building is quite tight this year anyway, to be honest. This room was not going to return to a cafeteria until we're farther down sort of our real estate master plan. But also meals in the classroom, which is not ideal. We liked having kids mix and mingle and dine together, but I think that it's not prudent to adjust that right now. All of this, of course, happens in the background of we know there are different variants coming out. So far, there doesn't seem to be a more deadly variant, but there is a more contagious one, and who knows what the next letter in the Greek alphabet may bring us. So we're not going to try to go back to normal in that sense of kids all mixing with each other in the building. Following the SCD guidelines, which are following the CDC guidelines, we'll have students seated at least 3 feet apart. They will also be wearing masks, as I mentioned. The educational trade-off there is we love our rug lessons, and we just in this building don't have enough rug room to do 3 feet and on the rug. So that stinks. But it seems like the trade-off that has to be made. That's right. Oh yeah, I had that in the written version. If you, it is there. Oh yeah. Delanis was just reminding me to point out that we will have kids mingle across classrooms when they're outside at recess. Right. We expect outdoor recess to return with more than one class. We know that it's hard to evaluate the effectiveness of the pod, but mostly we want to prevent a situation where we have to have a lot of kids be held at home. And so this gives us a better shot at not having a contact tracing situation where a lot of our school has to quarantine. Yeah. This was also a difficult trade-off, but we're not feeling comfortable yet having visiting adults in the building. And I hate to actually describe parents that way because you're our parents, and we miss you. We miss seeing you in the front office and visiting classrooms and doing that. But again, there's enough uncertainty that it does become kind of a contact tracing nightmare should anything happen in the building. So we're gonna do what we got relatively good at last year. We're gonna keep having tables outside when we need them. We're gonna keep talking on the phone. We're gonna keep doing Zoom calls, and probably we're gonna be expecting to do things like back to school night over Zoom for the time being. And if that changes, we'll be happy. But right now, that would have to be the plan. No change to hand washing, hygiene. The routine of disinfecting every single day is not something that has been shown to actually make a difference. And so it's not any longer recommended by the CDC, except right after you've had a positive case as an extra precaution. So that would be what we would plan to do. The SED guidelines were a little bit ambiguous about this. They sort of allude to disinfection, but they don't cite the CDC guidance, which doesn't really recommend it. But look, we've invested a lot in maintenance. We have daily cleaning. There's plenty of disinfectant used around this building. We have the equipment to do a big disinfection when we need to. But I think we've learned this is primarily an airborne disease. And I think the risk of fomite-based transmission is considered less than 1 in 10,000 chance, and there's no evidence it really happens. So we want to focus on the masks and the symptoms and the vaccines as much as we can. A few other things, not in order here. Temperature screens are not actually recommended anymore, but they're relatively low cost, and we do sometimes identify a kid who's sick. So we're going to keep doing that. We know how to do it. It's quick. It doesn't really delay arrival. And once in a while, we catch a symptom, which ends up actually saving us time, because by the time a kid goes to the nurse and you have to call mom and dad, we're spending time, they're getting disrupted at work. We'd rather notice that up front. And maybe that's just the new normal. I don't know, but it's handy to check temperatures, I think. On the other hand, symptom questionnaires are also no longer really recommended. I don't think there was a single case last year where somebody made it all the way into the school and was filling out a symptom questionnaire and said, oh, you know what, I actually do have a fever today. And yet it is a lot of work on our front desk. So we're going to phase that out. People will still sign in for contact tracing purposes. They'll still check their temperature, but we're going to reduce the paperwork there. The only exception to that is, especially at the beginning of the year, we'll continue to orally ask families, hey, everybody feeling okay at home? and that sort of thing as we get used to the routine. We have an opportunity. I mean, first of all, there are vendors out there who will help schools do on-site COVID testing for students. And there was a recent lawsuit that charter schools prevailed in that gave us an opportunity to have the DOE pay for it. I shouldn't say pay for it, to have the DOE provide it through their own folks. We signed up for, the opportunity to participate. We are waiting for information about how that would work. At this time, we don't plan to do COVID testing for students, but the CDC's recommendations turn on how much community spread there is and what the infection rates are, and we'll have to understand sort of what our options are. So I will get back to this group about that, as will Deli Ness, but right now I would say we're still evaluating the plan there. Some schools do random testing, but at what frequency and how our families feel about that, that's one thing we're going to be asking is how do you feel about having your child COVID tested, so we can sort of weigh the pros and cons. Okay, so I'd love to open this up for discussion about any or all of the COVID safety rules. And if you're here in the room, I will walk with the computer and broach social distancing just for a minute. But you guys have any thoughts? Oh yeah. Well, actually, maybe I'll just, I'll start with the parent questions. Thank you, Charles. Lauren asked a question. What about the teachers and staff who may interact during lunch breaks with unvaccinated staff members? Yeah, I mean, that's the main answer there is that they'll both be wearing masks. But it's true that if we have anyone who's not vaccinated in the building, they could have caught COVID since their last weekly COVID test, and that could be a way that it's in our building. I think that's a fact that it's important that we acknowledge. During lunch breaks, during PD, I mean, we're collaborative as a team, so we do interact with each other. And I couldn't say that any staff member is sort of like isolated beyond the masks that that we were all wearing before we had the vaccine available. Maybe that's a good time. I don't want to put you on the spot, Lauren, but we've emailed a little bit about this. If you feel like making a comment, I'm going to press the allow to talk button, but as always, you don't have to. Can you hear us okay?
Hi, this is Jay Lawrence.
Oh, hi,
here.
Jay.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Yes, the lesser half. So what would it take for you to institute a mandate? What would have to happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jay. The question was, what would it take to institute a mandate? So Mel, I know you guys can't all hear, so I'm gonna repeat some comments. So Melody was just saying that it's hard because there's people outside in the greater world who are not vaccinated as well, and so you wouldn't have to be exposed in the school to end up having it. Was that the point that you were making? Yeah.
Comment too, because I think all of us are really struggling with how to deal with something that is dangerous and we don't really totally understand yet. But I think these steps are taken mostly because we want everyone to be responsible, and we want to remind them all the time to continue being responsible. And we can't control what everybody's doing at home when they're outside of the building. And the kids are all not going to be vaccinated, and we're just asking everybody to always be vigilant and responsible. And I think these rules reflect that. Although I'm certainly, open to discussion about figuring out what else we can do. you know, I think the stage we're at is that having an honest handful of people in the building may or may not be vaccinated, but comply with these rules isn't presenting such a major risk. But again, I'm not a medical doctor. Not any kind.
Nor am I. And I also want to be clear, we are going to continue this conversation, not only with families, as I mentioned, but also with staff members, right? So,
Michael? Hear me?
hang on one sec, Delinus, I'm sorry. We have equipment that'll be here for next month, so this will be smoother, I promise. Lauren, were you speaking?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt anyone. I just can't hear everybody around me. But I would just say, I don't know if this was guidance from Fauci recently, but I mean, he did say, and I'm sure this goes without saying, you know, obviously our kiddos at the moment are too young to be vaccinated. His recommendation, the best way to protect kids is to surround them by vaccinated adults, you know, especially in light of the Delta variant. And I realize that 92% or so of the staff are vaccinated. We understand that there are different competing interests at stake, including staffing shortages, potential staffing shortages. But I mean, we're hearing, our kids are the most vulnerable because they cannot be vaccinated. We cannot. They're under 12 years old at this time. And I guess, if the safest way is to surround them with vaccinated people, I guess we're just wondering, like Jay said, is there an answer as to when it might be mandated, and the individuals who are refusing to be vaccinated, if not, and it's not for medical reasons, what is the source of information that they're that they're getting and sort of believing misinformation that then they're bringing into the schools. I mean, I'm not trying to be judgy, but at the same time, I am very concerned with what information they're getting that leads them to refuse to be vaccinated when it's been recommended that that's the way to protect kids the most.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there, right? So I guess how I think about it as a leader is, on the one hand, I am very persuaded by the evidence. And on the other hand, I know that different people in our community, different communities within our community have different concerns. And, something being recommended for some people is what you need to know, and others are less trusting of authority or have had personal experiences. One thing I'm going to be looking into is sort of what are the rules around medical, because we have folks who have what I would consider, I'm trying to walk the right line here. Very
I can tell.
Like personal reasons that aren't rooted in disbelief of the research, but that nevertheless make them generally not into medicine. And I would say if I were them, I'd have the same reluctance based on their own lives. And so, I think that's what we want to do. One thing I will say, and I want to be responsive to your original question, Jay and Lauren, is there's sort of like a weighting that I think we have to do as we think about like risk of infection and like risk of danger. So if we were to have a variant that was putting kids in the hospital at high rates, that was a lot more dangerous than other kind of typical seasonal illnesses for children, I think the balance starts to shift very quickly. The hard thing about these decisions is that we can talk to the public health people about how do you maximize one consideration, and they're right and they're experts, they are, but we also have all these different considerations and they're not weighing them. So I think, to me, that's something that's on my mind. But it may be that there's, like, in a case or two, almost like a mental health medical exemption, and we can get it up to 98%. I'm definitely willing to keep working with everybody on this. We'd love to be at 100%.
Jay, do you have anything? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. We do
you.
understand. I know you're doing all, we know you're doing what you can. So you know, please note that we know that.
Thanks. Ms. Woods, you're on the line. Again, you don't have to comment, but if you'd like to, please feel free.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I will start by saying this is a very sensitive topic. And so, you know, I heard like why, you know, a question about why people are refusing. I don't necessarily know that it's a refusal. And you know, and I hear like kids under 12, they can't be vaccinated. And so they're recommending that they are surrounded by vaccinated adults, but a lot of families may not be vaccinated. I'm one, right? And so it's something that as in my family, we're struggling with making that decision. That doesn't make me any less concerned about the safety of my son or the students at LEEP, right? It's and I think you put it well, Michael, like people have different reasons for why they're hesitant. And so I think, I mean, I'm okay with knowing that you have some staff that aren't vaccinated and you're not mandating it yet. I'm struggling right now because like Broadway is going to be mandated. We have tickets for Aladdin, right? And so it's a very sensitive topic. And I think that I did like the question, what will require it to be mandated? And I'm curious, you know, once you all determine that. But, you know, what I do want to say is, because I'm starting to hear that a lot, like vaccinated versus unvaxxed, and, you know, people that are vaccinated are good and those who are not are bad. And, you know, that's not the case, right? And then also, I know a lot of people who are vaccinated that have also got COVID. And so, again, I just want to say it's a delicate topic. And I was very like personal right now, but it's a very delicate topic. And I guess as a parent right now, I'm okay with how you guys are navigating it. I've had to get COVID tests to participate in things. And yeah, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Amma. And I just want to appreciate your candor here. One of the norms that we've been using all week in our trainings with staff members, which I hear everybody on this call embodying, is assume the best. You know, we really start with an understanding that everybody's doing their best, making their best effort, you know, acting out of concern for our kids. That doesn't mean that these tough calls are any easier, because we do have to make decisions. But I know that everybody on this call and in this meeting has been assuming the best, and I know you are too. And I don't think anybody's questioning that in any direction. So I think actually those are kind of nice bookend comments, because these are the considerations that we have, not just among parents or board members, but also among our staff members. And so this is kind of how we try to do the work together. David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I really, to echo some of that, I really just wanted to thank all of you who just participated and were so open and honest with your feelings about this, and because they really do affect all of us and your families in particular. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I think you can see through that discussion why we struggle with, you know, making the rules that will work best for everybody and keep our student body exactly that, right? Our student body and active. So again, thank you. And Michael, thank you for considering that.
Right, I see.
Is there a question in the Q&A?
Yeah. Just, I don't want to linger too long, but Jay, I do think it's fair if you want to have a quick word, please go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I appreciate the comment, and I guess we can move on from here. But have you heard in terms of vaccinations that yes, people could get COVID when you're vaccinated, but that it reduces the chances of serious illness and hospitalization and death by in the 90% percentile. And in addition, if you do, you can still get COVID when you're vaccinated, but that's true if you've heard this. but it's transmissible if you get it. And since we're dealing with kids who haven't been vaccinated or can't get vaccinated, you know, would you agree that it just outweighs any kind of, you know, the benefits would outweigh any kind of cost here?
Well, I guess that's the question, and thanks for raising the point. I mean, I think I think weighing is the right metaphor. It's a judgment call that we kind of have to weigh as a community. So I know that we'll continue the conversation, but thank you guys for sort of, again, assuming the best and digging in with us on this. I also want to thank Magdalena and Emily on our education committee for helping us test some of these ideas and sharing with us what some of the other schools have been up to. Even within the charter school sector, I know there's a spectrum of, you know, how communities you serve feel, how your teachers feel, how leaders are interpreting the different data and evidence. So.
Also, the fact that we're up at 90 or 90+% vaccinated staff is really reassuring, paired with the mask mandate for staff and students. And mask mandate is like a term these days in the news, but I think it just like, that's very sensible. And there'll be a point eventually when, truthfully, I think in order to work in education anywhere, everyone's going to eventually have to be vaccinated, likely, as with the other major vaccines, but that point is not yet. So we're in a safer place than a lot of other schools.
Right. And I think if we've learned anything, it's just not plan too far out, because the last year was changing information and changing norms and guidelines pretty regularly. So again, just to recap, interested in your feedback, everybody on the board. I'll share this again with the larger board, and also we'll be asking families and talking this over. August 24th is our family webinar, and so I hope you guys can plan to be there if you're one of our families, and we'll have more to say about this. Any last comments in the room here?
I have a fair amount of developing contingencies and an under 12 vaccine becomes available, and the communication leading up to that anticipated point in the unknown future includes gauging families' own willingness to have their very young children vaccinated. So just as tapping staff now, so to student body themselves will be this mixed, you know, group of heartfelt and honest feelings about this. But maybe the more you can learn now about family sensibilities would set us up to be able to adapt more quickly, because it's likely to be nothing, and then the gate's open.
Yeah.
So that's one, we don't know when, but we can anticipate.
But I think that, I think where we are is understanding the rules we're trying to put upon staff, and how to make sure we have staff be as safe as possible in the classroom. I don't want to give this short shrift, but I do want to not get lost in things that we are not.
Right.
And the other thing I'll say is that I completely agree with what a lot of people have said on this call, and I think that means that really is that this battle is not against our staff. It's not against our kids, right? It's against this virus and how people are treating it, and how this community at large is treating it. And that is not anything we're going to do by making these other handful of people do something they don't want to do. But you're absolutely right. It's going to trickle down and change the whole way out. But we have families on all sides of it. We have the community around us on all sides of it. And we do our best to put our staff in a position to be safe, to continue, like I said, for the student body to be the student body. Like I assure you that in the work behind the scenes, no one is giving this issue any kind of shortness of time, and is reading more things than they should if they care to sleep at night about how, you know, this disease is changing. And so, like, I will continue to talk about this if we'd like to discuss why or why not certain provisions are in this policy. But at this moment, like, I don't want to just wax poetically about whether we think an 8-year-old should get a vaccine. because that's not helpful.
No, but I do take the,
So I'm about gauging the temperature
Yes.
as it stands today, as a community,
yeah,
inclusive of parents.
I think it's an important question to ask so we understand where people are.
Change these to a vaccine schedule tomorrow.
Right.
Not, not a recommendation, but if you find out that 95% of families are like, yeah, fine, I'll go for it, that'll change the just post planning.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
mentioned that because you said you have a moment of engagement in it.
Right.
For families, and it's not too soon, in the kindest way.
Right.
Just say, hey, what do you feel about this? And, take their hand.
Yeah, no, I think it. So,
Could be within this school year.
yeah. Maho's comment was student vaccines could be an issue or an opportunity within this very school year, which is true. So to summarize, David's suggestion was that we ask in our upcoming engagement about families' attitudes toward a potential student vaccine for younger kids, which I think is a good suggestion. David was saying we want to make sure we're focused on the immediate next steps, which is also very true. I wanted to follow up on a couple of details. First of all, you use the word contingency, David, and that reminds me, our contingency plans are also still being worked out, right, telling us, because we don't have a remote section in each grade anymore. If there's an individual student, let's say, who is exposed and has to stay home, it's not going to be as easy as, okay, just go join the remote section for a couple of days. So whether we're using substitutes or whether we're using simulcasting by the same classroom teacher is something that we're looking at now. We know that scenario will come up. And so, we're figuring out what that looks like this year. Amma, you asked about class sizes for this year. The answer is yes, our class sizes will be back up to our normal levels, as you put it, the pre-COVID levels, within the constraints of the 3-foot guideline. That's how our classrooms are set up now. The CDC guide for schools essentially says keep that distance and also wear a mask and also make sure that you're not leaving kids at home, because the priority is to get your kids back in the building. So we've been following the spirit and the letter of that. It's going to be, look, there's a trade-off there. There were some nice things about having really small classrooms, especially in kinder. But we also had associate kindergarten teachers who didn't have their mentor teacher with them. And we had all kinds of other things that were not how our school was really designed, that were sort of in place. So we're planning for normalcy. I think that's better than having to put classes back together mid-year. I think we're planning to be back to normal. But in terms of class sizes, I appreciate there's a little bit of a trade-off there to have somewhat of a bigger class. Okay, so more to come on this. We will be communicating out, as I mentioned, to families and continuing to see what's going on in the world and what we're hearing from our community.
So yeah, that's what I was talking about, gathering input from our families, and getting a stronger understanding on what our families are thinking about, because their children, so that their voices.
Vanessa just saying we do want to make sure parents' voice is heard, which is right. Okay, I think Maho.
A quick comment on the regarding input. I was wondering if it makes sense to include a question in the questionnaire about how parents feel about having an unvaccinated teacher.
They're doing the same thing right now.
Just because some parents might not care and some parents might feel very strongly. And that could lead to problems later down the line. And sorry? Oh. And just because I was thinking that could also,
Yeah.
I don't know what the reservations are for the teachers, but maybe for some of them, it might help them weigh one way or the other if they know how their families feel about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I was feeling bad that we didn't have the survey out before this meeting, but now I'm kind of glad because we can incorporate this feedback. All right, so I think we'll keep moving, but again, obviously this is something we'll be revisiting. In another jarring segue, our next item of business is a contract approval. I'm sorry, Lauren, the question was, Maho was suggesting that we also ask families about their personal attitude about having an unvaccinated teacher for their kid. And so that's another kind of piece of data that we can be collecting in our survey. JustWorks. If our fourth sector guys are on the line, you guys should look alive, please. Do you want me to introduce this?
You may as well. I mean,
Yeah.
more or less routine back office business, but I think Bob has a relationship there, so he may have something to say about that.
Well, we've had a change of HR facilitators. We love the company Little Bird. They got bought out by the company that we previously worked with, who we didn't like. So that was ironic and annoying. And now that we're done with that, we negotiated a big discount to stick around for a few months, but that period is done. So we're moving on. Little Bird is no more. We're not going to stay with the other firm. And so we did diligence at some level on about 6 different firms. We got quotes, we talked to people, we saw software demos. It was more than I wanted to know about this little industry, but it really does make a difference to our staff and to our ops team. And so we settled on a recommendation from JustWorks. I know Bob has some clients in common there and was just telling the finance committee last night that they're very smooth and easy to work with. Fiscally speaking, between fees and insurance costs, we have a modest savings by making this move, about $16,000 a year. We would look to try to put that back into some benefits, some more generous benefits in terms of where we set our cutoffs for employees. And so the vote tonight would be just to adopt that. So if you're on the board, the contract was in the pre-reads. And since I made him come to this meeting, I think I will ask Bob if he can weigh in. Bob, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so unfortunately, Little Bird, who was kind of the primary provider of outsourced HR services in the charter school space in New York, was purchased by TriNet. That has not been going very great. There were probably 70 charter schools in the city that were forced to move there, and most of them, very similar to LEEP, are looking for other options. So to Michael's point, we work with 2 other schools that work with JustWorks. The level of customer service that we receive has been exponentially better than what we're currently receiving through TriNet. So that coupled with the cost savings, I think it's a no-brainer for the school.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, so for everyone in the room, if you couldn't hear, sorry. Service is much better from this company, according to Bob's other clients and his team who work with this vendor directly. So I don't see it as a close call. I think this is going to be a nice improvement for our team.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's certainly a minimal savings. If you can give that back to the teachers and give them a better system, staff, and give them a better system to manage the packages, it seems obvious enough to me too. So I would recommend that we adopt it. And I think I hope I can speak for Charles Lewis and discussing the finance committee meeting last night and made sense to us as well. So I can strike that from the finance committee report.
All right. I move to adopt the contract.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you, Mama. So here we have a motion to approve the contract. All those in favor? Aye. And any opposed? Okay, so the Just Works contract will carry.
Thank you. I mentioned this in the notes. I will briefly summarize. Our authorizer requires a board vote for an organizational chart change. We were originally, they had a different process, but they've clarified what their process is. And so as long as we were going to go back to you guys to do a resolution specifically about the org chart change to reflect Roberto's role and my role, I thought I would lay out just exactly how we are functioning day to day right now. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say like so far so good. We have our principal Deli Ness, our vice principal working with her, our deans who are for the sake of the org chart say that they're supervising our teachers. That's the day-to-day reality. And then our director of student services, formerly our counselor Edgar Sanchez. Now he has a team. He has a social worker. He has special education teachers, paraprofessionals there. Matthew Padilla, our Senior Director of Operations, oversees MIDA and the team that she has had and has always had, as well as Diana Carrera, our Director of Summer and After School Programs, and the temporary and part-time folks who work for her. And then the one other change that's of significance is Margarita Chang, our Family Director, had officially been reporting in to the Executive Director in the past. In my view, it makes more sense to streamline things since her work so overlaps with the rest of the operations team. So it doesn't mean that I don't care about family experience or Margarita's work, but rather it made sense to fold her into that team reporting into Matthew. So that's my very quick summary. And I think we would just ask for any discussion, and if not, a resolution to adopt this. I don't believe there's anything on this that we haven't discussed with the board in the past. We're just going to have a few of these kind of rubber stamp items as we go make sure that we're totally current with our authorizer. I see a thumbs up. I see 2 thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
Discuss. Okay, I make a motion, we approve the org chart changes.
Second motion.
Okay, so we'll.
I liked your programming, but it seems like there was more of a role than reporting back only to the principal and not supervising.
It's a fair question. I think this is I have my answer, but this is your team, Deli Ness. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I do see Johanna eventually supporting me in overseeing and working directly overseeing some of the teams right now because she is new to the organization. First, want to make sure that she has the opportunity to know me, to work with me, for us to more and align, for know the team, and then we'll divide responsibilities and see who goes to who. But for right now, since I have a completely new leadership team, I want to make sure that there's alignment there and that I'm listening to
And there's one other piece to that too.
Yeah.
So if I can summarize what you said, we want to make sure that this new team and a new vice principal have room to come together as a team and focus on the work. We also, you may recall, originally had a dean of culture on the org chart, and we got to meet Joanna, and she was incredible, and she wanted to do that culture work, which she has an amazing background for, but she's also sort of overqualified. And so we changed the title to vice principal. She's been, as you guys know, a principal in the past, and one of Emily's colleagues. But I think that was sort of the thinking there, was we want to give her room to do the culture work that really attracted her to the organization in the first place. And then as that is all done, we're going to look around and say, all right, well, she's the vice principal. Clearly she's going to have some kind of oversight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, in that case, I wish we could see what we were comparing it against. But the other thing is that I'm really mostly curious, what of these require a vote or considered material changes other than the movement of you and Roberto?
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be deemed a material change or not. that's sort of a technical question. I don't think it will be. In other words, an org chart doesn't have to get voted on by the Board of Regents. But as far as SED is concerned, the actual chart is a thing. Like you submit a chart and then you submit a change to the chart. So I don't think we need to ask for a resolution on any particular line or word. It's just like, here's the new chart and that includes this information. So we can make changes here, but what they'll be sort of approving is the chart. That's like their unit of analysis.
There's a motion, I'm sorry, having a motion seconded to approve this organizational chart. And opposed. All right, hearing none.
Thank you all. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, it's good. We'll go into committee reports. I appreciate that we're a little over our typical time tonight, but I think it was worth having a discussion. Finance committee?
Yeah, the finance committee was mostly going to mention the Just Works contract, being that the fiscal year began about 6 weeks ago. There's really not all too much to report other than the enrollment numbers, which Michael discussed earlier, are generally looking positive with the exception of some backfill seats, which we hope will be full, back to 100% of what we budgeted. But as Bob, I'm sure, can tell you if he's still here, we have a tendency to over budget on certain students and under budget on others, and usually we end up shaking it out in the wash, so to speak. So I'm hopeful that that will continue, but in terms of budgeted spending, there's really nothing much to report. And thanks to the board for helping approve that contract change. But we'll have more exciting things next month as we enter our audit process and have to take the numbers a little more seriously. And I remember to turn on.
Oh, thank you. I hope this is reassuring. We don't budget for 100% enrollment. I believe we budget for 95%. So we're within the realm of the margin of error.
So I suppose I can just continue and move on to the executive committee. I think the big report from the executive committee this month is that we have put together a little procedure by which we'd like to get everybody more involved in committee work and board work in general. And so beginning, I think, tomorrow morning, the school administration will probably will be reaching out to everyone on the board with a letter from Charles and me. And that will basically be telling you a bit about what we'd like to talk about with each of you, and that you'll be getting a call from one of us, and it'll tell you on there who it is. And then we can organize a time through the school administration. Just that way we'll have it on our calendar, and we can get to know each other a little better. But I think predominantly what Charles and I have been discussing is making sure that we know what it is you want to do, what you think you really will bring to the table, and then also what you're passionate about helping with, what you think can be done differently, and how we can develop these committees to really be provide the maximum benefit to the school, and in that, to that end, we also discussed, probably adding another subcommittee here that's really more focused on the general health. And I don't mean that in a medical way, but in a more emotional and general well-being of how what the barometer is like in school, how we can improve that attitude and that culture and be more proactive as people that are trying to help develop the school. So I hope we can continue to do that, and we can make some time for those discussions and stay on our general timeline of making sure we have things well accounted for to vote and finalize for the October meeting, because it's too late to say I want to hit the ground running. I mean, the ground is going to be gone. We're just going to have to try to catch up. And another big thanks to the school's leadership and the Academic and Accountability Committee for making sure that things continued to move, even absent some of that stuff. So, really appreciate everybody continuing to do all of that. And we're just going to all get better together as the year goes forward. So thanks. And I think that's it for the executive committee. Did I miss any highlights?
No, yeah. The third committee we're thinking about creating is kind of like a catch-all thing. Like we talked about this, but either organizational development or program or something, and even community engagement, like David, you wrote for started that committee, and things like that. Just because the two committees right now, it's either academics, which is Emily, and making sure we're assessing data, test scores or checking on that. The other is finance, which is money. So I think we do need a third committee, which is just a little more general, and I think we'll create that. And like Dave said, he and I will reach out to everyone on the board and just kind of talk about what you think might fit, what you might, your skill set might best fit and help the organizations.
Just
I'm sorry, there are also more people in that contemplation because we've added a couple of board members who hopefully will have paperwork go through and be on the board.
Yeah,
I thought I was being obvious enough. Sorry, but Bob.
I was just gonna remind, I don't remember the specifics of this, but I do remember that this was mentioned in the board development retreat we had some time ago. It's not easy to add committees, but it is easy to add subcommittees. I think it had something to do with the approvals. Oh, no, it had to do with it being, how it had to be reported and all that, so that it's easier to add subcommittees. So if we wanted to add more groupings, it might be easier to put them under other umbrellas to have those general catch-all. Just, it would be good to look into the details for that.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll follow up on that. That's an important point. Very good.
Yes, we met last Thursday, had a great discussion about really primarily around the priorities. I shared some of the notes I shared with you all and a couple other pieces of feedback around implementation and how we can make sure that it goes from this really beautiful vision to the progress we want to see a month from now, 2 months from now, and over the course of the year. And then we actually talked a lot about COVID policies because academic leadership is spending a lot of time talking about COVID policies as well. So we actually brainstorm a bunch of what we see today, and I think that that's in a really solid position right now. So it's great.
You.
Yep.
I'm sorry we started running.
I'm glad. Ajana's good.
Board norms and do you want to discuss anything here, or should I just go through what we've done, or is it enough that I've said my paperwork in? There are also some other folks we've been talking to that I don't know if anyone else had the opportunity to meet. And I'm also very excited about the prospect that they will come on board at least part of the time for the finance and real estate development aspects of the school. And I know that I've personally spoken with at least one other person, and I know that both of you have, but I think everybody has also been very involved in the language learning model, and at least consented to spend more time talking to us. I don't know how far in they really want to get at this point, but I'm hopeful that we'll spend a considerable amount of time with us as well, because not only do they have a background in academics and charters, but specifically in immersion language. So I think that all of that is great as we continue to develop the board. And I think I already took away the remainder of the items executive committee report. And that's
Yeah. So
request will be adapted for board development without increasing cost. It sounds like you talked about our coaching model and feedback and
Yeah.
platform, and not to put too many whistles and bells on it, but maybe there's a feature set within that would help.
Yeah.
With what you're.
Yeah.
Idea.
Well, I also, implicit in your point, David, is that board development doesn't only include adding people, but developing our people. And so we already have one excuse to go check in with the board consultants we've used in the past, and maybe that's a good time to think about it. Yeah, and I know. Well, and that also may fall into a category of sort of it's not academic, it's not strictly finance, but it's about our well-being as a school. I know you run a board, and that's a lot of your day job, and so yeah, I'd love to hear like more thoughts. Maybe we can connect offline about that. Yeah. Okay, we had a few public comments earlier, but I think we should probably open the floor since that was only about COVID. Do we have anybody else? Jeff, by the way, shout out to Jeff. He's a member of Bob's team. Amma, do you have any comments?
Summer camp was amazing. We wish it was longer, but we understand why it couldn't have been.
I'm
That's
glad to
it.
hear that.
Yep, that's it.
I'm sorry, I talked over you, Amma. What was that?
No, that was it. Jair had he
Okay.
had a really good time with his friends and with all the staff.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, we're excited to see him again in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Yeah? You, that's good. That's good. Yeah. That one really nice thing, I'll digress for just 30 more seconds. The fact that we had this summer school and summer camp meant that we have a sort of pre-vetted and pre-trained group of candidates to work in our after-school program this year, and maybe even a substitute teacher or two. So it's kind of nice to have that wheel turning of continually being, yeah, a pipeline. So.
I'm glad to see a big focus on what's happening in the classroom, making sure that we're here. But I don't want to lose sight of, just general, more traditional professional development, right? Like you've moved one person from one position to a science position. You've moved one person into a second grade position, right? And so really bringing people into a place where they feel that they're developing as a professional, not just as a teacher of this child. Not that I don't want them to teach that child, right? It's but I think that making a pipeline that goes from start and then to the next place is what's going to help make that very special for them. And so it's something we've talked a lot about, and I know we'll continue to hear more ideas about how to develop that going forward. Look, and I've said it before, it's an unfortunate thing. If you're doing really well and your teachers are really thriving, they're going to be getting job offers, right? But that doesn't mean you're not, that means you're succeeding at making them great teachers. That's just a problem you're going to have to learn to work with. And, we'll always be here to figure out, can we pay them? Can we do this? Can we do that? But, I'd love to be solving for that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Good. Is there a need for an executive session?
I don't know. I think probably next month I'm going to make everybody stay. So since we're already late, and I know it'll be next month. You have anything we should stick around?
Sure.
In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning the meeting? Aye. Thanks again to our guests, and with that, we'll adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
You have to come up with a more